President Biden's commission to study possible reforms to the Supreme Court had its first meeting this week. Calls to expand the bench of the nation's highest court grew louder after Senate Republicans confirmed Justice Amy Coney Barrett to replace Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Now, before he won the presidency, Mr. Biden promised to create the commission to study the court during an interview on 60 Minutes.
And I will ask them to, over 180 days, come back to me with recommendations as to how to reform the court system, because it's getting out of whack, the way in which it's being handled. And it's not about court packing. There's a number of other things that our constitutional scholars have debated, and I'd look to see what recommendations that commission might make.
So for more on this, I want to bring in CBS News digital reporter Melissa Quinn. Melissa, thanks for joining us. You heard President Biden say that the commission is not about adding more justices to the bench. So then what is the commission working on? Term limits, or what is the proposed outcome of these meetings?
So good morning, and thank you for having me. The purpose of the commission is really to analyze all of these arguments for and against the various proposals to reform the Supreme Court. And that includes looking into the merits of these proposals as well as the legality of them. The commission met for the first time on Wednesday and sort of quickly outlined the 5 different areas of research that it intends to delve into. And that includes things like the court's role in our constitutional system, its current membership and size, which gets at that court packing issue, the tenure of the justices, which addresses potentially term limits, and also the court's case selection and its docket rules and procedures.
So what's the commission's time frame for studying these issues?
President Biden's executive order said that from the date of its first public meeting, which was this past Wednesday, it now has 180 days to go ahead and issue its report analyzing all of these different reform proposals. So we're looking at a report that could come out by mid to late November, which is interesting because, of course, that will come right when the Supreme Court is beginning its October 2021 term and beginning to hear cases.
So we should point out that this term court packing is actually a term that was created by those who are critical of the idea of adding additional justices to the Supreme Court. You heard the president use it himself. But what would it take to actually add seats to the Supreme Court? Because we do know, at least in the history of this country, the Supreme Court has had a range when it comes to the number of seats. There have been 6, I think, at the low end, and up to 10 at the top end. And it's not something that's stipulated in the Constitution. So what exactly would it mean, or what would it take to change the number of justices on the court?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The Constitution does not specify how many members there should be on the Supreme Court, but it does say that Congress has the authority over the size and scope of the federal judiciary. So it would take an act of Congress. And we have seen a proposal from a group of Democratic lawmakers in both the House and the Senate. They put forth a bill, I believe it was last month, that would add 4 seats to the Supreme Court, so bring its total to 13. But we've been at 9 justices for 150 years. So quite a long time. And even some of the Supreme Court's members, the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Justice Stephen Breyer, who's under a ton of pressure right now to step down from the Supreme Court and allow President Biden to name a successor, have said repeatedly and publicly that they think that 9 is a good number. And Justice Breyer recently, in a lecture before Harvard Law School, said that any efforts to add seats to the Supreme Court beyond the current 9, he feels, could potentially damage public trust in the institution.
So, Melissa, who's on the commission, and what are some of the specific areas of expertise they have?
The commission is quite large. It has 36 different members. It's co-chaired by Bob Bauer, who was former White House counsel and a key advisor to President Biden during the last presidential campaign, and Christina Rodriguez, who was a former Deputy Assistant Attorney General at the Justice Department. The vast majority of these 36 members are law professors. Some have expertise in constitutional law, election law, and there's also some former federal judges. Thomas Griffith, for example, served on the D.C. Circuit. just until the fall of 2020, and the heads of influential and well-known legal groups like Sherilyn Ifill, for example, who is the head of the NAACP's Legal Defense Fund. So it's quite an intelligent group of commissioners.
So you mentioned that some Democratic lawmakers have introduced legislation to add 4 justices to the Supreme Court. You talked a little bit about where that stands right now. At this point, you know, we're hearing mostly from progressives when it comes to the conversation about adding justices. But in the past, have Republicans supported that idea, perhaps at another time when they were in a different position, when there weren't so many conservative justices?
It doesn't seem like this measure is going to get any Republican support, and Republicans have been very outspoken in saying that, number one, they don't agree with adding 4 seats to the Supreme Court, and they also disagree with the reasons why Democrats want to do this, which is really to dilute the power of the conservative majority. There's 6 justices on the court now who were appointed by Republican presidents. The bill really seems to have stalled at this point. It's interesting when the group of Democratic lawmakers went to formally announce their proposal with a big press conference on the steps of the Supreme Court. Almost at the exact same time, a reporter asked House Speaker Nancy Pelosi if she intended to bring the bill to the floor, and she said she had no plans to do so. She didn't say outright that she supported or opposed the proposal. What she did say was that President Biden's commission should have the time, that 180 days, to research these arguments for and against, issue their report, and then lawmakers can go ahead and make their own assessment. And that's similar to what we've heard from the White House as well after that group of Democratic lawmakers introduced the bill, which is President Biden wants to hear from people on both sides.
All right. Melissa, great reporting. Thank you as always. We appreciate it.
Thank you.